Voilà, dear colleagues, chers collègues, beste collega's, le comité d'avis fédéral chargé des questions européennes a le plaisir d'accueillir aujourd'hui une délégation de la Commission des affaires européennes du Parlement suédois, sous la direction de son président, monsieur Hans Wallmark. Beste Hans, ik heb u reeds meermaals kunnen ontmoeten tijdens COSAC-vergaderingen, onder meer tijdens het Zweedse voorzitterschap in Stockholm en 2 weken geleden nog in Madrid. En ik kan u verzekeren dat wij het veranderen dat u ons gecontacteerd heeft om deze gedachtewisseling te organiseren. Iets meer dan 3 maanden voor ons voorzitterschap zijn wij natuurlijk ook nieuwsgierig naar de lessen die uitgetrokken heeft uit uw voorzitterschap en meer bepaald uit de parlementaire dimensie ervan. Comme convenu avec votre délégation et communiqué aux membres de notre comité d'avis, les thèmes suivants pourront être abordés. Tout d'abord, la future présidence belge du Conseil de l'Union européenne et la dimension parlementaire. Nous serions ravis de partager avec vous l'état.
Does it work?
Does it work?
Okay.
Yes. OK, je vais recommencer le petit passage. Tout d'abord, la future présidence belge du Conseil de l'Union européenne et la dimension parlementaire. Nous serions ravis de partager avec vous l'état d'avancement des préparatifs pour cette présidence. De plus, nous pourrions également discuter des questions importantes de l'agenda et de l'actualité européenne. Ik zou onze Zweedse collega's nog op willen wijzen dat de Belgische Federale Parlement over de gemengde commissie van de Kamer van volksvertegenwoordigers en de Senaat beschikt om toezicht te houden op de Europese aangelegenheden. Vandaar de naam Federaal Adviescomité voor Europese aangelegenheden. En particulier, autre particularité de notre comité d'avis, outre les 10 députés et les 10 sénateurs, 10 membres belges du Parlement européen sont également membres. Monsieur le Président, cher Hans, je propose que vous preniez d'abord la parole, suivi de vos collègues. Ensuite, les membres du comité d'avis fédéral pourront également participer à nos travaux, à nos échanges. Merci, en tout cas, de votre visite ici à Bruxelles.
Well, thank you, dear Gaetan. And it's a real pleasure to be here in your extremely beautiful Senate. It's the first visit for me, and I feel that also it's the same for several of my colleagues from the Committee on European Affairs. So thank you for receiving us. It's a pleasure, and it's also a pleasure to work together in the Troika, together with Spain. And you, I must say, you are also a very active member during our meetings. So Belgium has a strong voice in you, Mr. Chairman, I must really underline. Well, I think that also my colleagues can intervene on our experience from the 6 months of the presidency. 6 months can in the beginning looks like an eternity, but it's then quite rapidly is quite quick. You have managed all the 6 months. I would say that some of the themes that we had in our program most probably also going to be themes in your. And of most interest is, of course, the ugly, destroying, full-scale invasion from Russia to Ukraine. And I think that the support of Ukraine also going to be something that you need to deal with during your presidency. But we have also other themes, as we also discussed during the COSAC chairpersons meeting in Madrid: green transition, competitiveness, that we also this year celebrate 30 years of the single market. So those kind of things and themes are very important. And I also see exactly in the spot when I look down, my deputy chair, and I know that also organized crime is a very important theme for the Swedish delegation. So those are some of the crumbles that we can brush up from the Swedish presidency. But I think that Ukraine is really going to be in focus also for your presidency, because unfortunately, I think that this ugly war is going to be continued over to next year as well. I don't know if some of my colleagues want to intervene, say something. Deputy Chair Matilda Ernkrans from the Social Democratic Party.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing and saying a few words. We are really happy to be here, and it's really very, very good that you are so many that have taken your time to meet up with us, and I think it's a good way to show that show the important work that we've got as parliamentarians. Just to say a few things on the note, the EU presidency. I think, well, of course, we're interesting to hear a little bit more on your priorities, the Belgian priorities for the EU presidency. But also, I would like to say from a parliamentarian perspective that at least in Sweden, and I'm from the biggest opposition party, but at least in Sweden, I think it's been good that we have had a very good cooperation between the government and the parliament when it comes to choosing the biggest topics that we wanted to address during the presidency. So, of course, the government made their decisions, but also we have tried in the parliament to also follow up with conferences and other meetings on the same topics. So we have arranged also meetings on green transition, on competitiveness, and also on the single market and on organized crime. And me myself, I'm very, I think it's very good that the Spanish presidency, they have actually put on their agenda the fight against organized crime and drugs, and I think that's very good of the Spanish government and the Spanish Parliament, because we need to do more also within our cooperation through EU on that matter. But I'll stop there. But thank you very much for receiving us. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I only want to add one thing, that during this visit, we also have visited the Commissioner Johansson, which are responsible for this kind of issues. And as Matilda Ernkrans mentioned, I think that the battle against organized crime is extremely important, and also the link on smuggling between countries with big ports. Belgium is one of them, Sweden is another one. So that was really one of the topics that we focused on together with the Commissioner Johansson. Well, back to you, Ketan.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, chers collègues. Je vais faire, avant de passer la parole à nos collègues, faire peut-être un bref état des lieux de la situation. Le gouvernement de Croo, par l'intermédiaire de la ministre Labib, ministre des Affaires étrangères, nous a présenté en début de l'été les priorités adoptées en trio avec l'Espagne et la Hongrie pour les 18 prochains mois. Au sein de celle-ci, nous pouvons notamment retrouver la consolidation de l'autonomie stratégique ouverte de l'Union européenne, le renforcement de la résilience économique, ainsi que la transition verte et numérique. L'importance primordiale de l'état de droit est également rappelée, de même que le besoin de lutter efficacement, comme vous l'avez souligné il y a quelques instants, Monsieur le Président, contre le crime organisé et les violences liées au genre. La trio-présidence s'engage également à poursuivre le processus d'élargissement conformément à la nouvelle méthodologie établie par le Conseil européen, en privilégiant une approche basée sur le mérite et en tenant compte de la capacité à accueillir de nouveaux membres. Vous vous souviendrez, Monsieur le Président, que ce fut d'ailleurs abordé lors de la dernière COSAC des présidents. L'Union restera déterminée à soutenir l'Ukraine, comme vous l'avez souligné, face à l'agression illégale de la Russie et à contribuer à sa reconstruction. Le gouvernement annoncera les priorités belges le 8 décembre prochain. En effet, il convient de suivre au plus près la présidence espagnole afin de prendre sa suite et définir les dossiers législatifs prioritaires qui nécessiteront d'être finalisés avant la fin de la législature européenne au mois de juin prochain. Certains dossiers dont nous pourrions hériter sont encore l'objet de discussions à l'heure actuelle, comme le pacte asile et migration, le Green Deal, Net Zero Industry Act, le paquet défense de la démocratie, la révision de la gouvernance économique et du cadre financier pluriannuel, pour ne citer quelques éléments. Et enfin, la présidence belge aura pour tâche, évidemment, de veiller à la bonne préparation de l'agenda stratégique de l'Union européenne pour la période 2024-2029. Pour l'heure, chers collègues, 6 grands axes qui permettront par la suite de dégager des priorités plus précises ont été mis en avant. La sécurité, défense et migration, l'état de droit et la démocratie, l'économie, le marché intérieur et le commerce, la politique sociale, l'emploi et la santé, la transition verte et enfin l'avenir de l'Union européenne. Concernant la dimension parlementaire de cette présidence, conformément aux usages habituels, différentes conférences interparlementaires seront organisées dans notre pays. Les COSAC, dont l'organisation relève de la compétence de ce comité, se dérouleront en janvier et en mars. Les thématiques abordées lors de celles-ci doivent être validées donc par les 2 coprésidents très prochainement. Et donc, vous aurez effectivement, chers collègues, la possibilité de prendre connaissance assez prochainement de cet agenda. Ainsi, les 11 et 12 février, il y aura donc une conférence, cela commencera donc, il y aura une semaine parlementaire européenne conférence sur la stabilité, la coordination et la gouvernance économique dans l'Union européenne. Le 18 et le 19 février, un groupe de contrôle parlementaire conjoint sur Europol. Le 3 et le 5 mars, la conférence interparlementaire sur la politique étrangère et de sécurité commune. Et enfin, donc, le 24 et le 26 mars, la COSAC plénière. Et pour commencer l'année, je l'avais oublié, le 14 et 15 janvier, la COSAC des présidents. Voilà quelques dates pour ne pas prendre trop de temps. Et donc, je passe dès à présent aux collègues qui souhaitent évidemment participer. Mevrouw Van Bossuyt heeft het woord en meneer De Mesmaeker vervolgen. Ja, u heeft het woord, ja.
Ja, dank u wel, meneer de voorzitter. I will speak in English. That's more easy for you, so you can put off your headphones. Good morning. I'm Amelie Van Bossuyt. I'm member from the NVA, the New Flemish Alliance. We're the biggest center-right party in Flanders, but also in Belgium. We are in the opposition at the moment at federal level. We have the minister-president in Flanders, but at federal level, we are in the opposition in Belgium. It's possible that the biggest party is in the opposition and that we have a prime minister of the 7th biggest party, only in Belgium, I think. So I have the same in Sweden. Okay, then we share already some feelings. I will go straight ahead to the questions I have, since I have seen that we have not so much time. You were president of the European Union just until June, if I'm correct. So my first question is, which lessons have you drawn from your presidency? I think it's important for us because Sweden is just like we are, a rather small country. So you have to fight or to face bigger countries like Germany and France, who are very often seen as the motor of the European Union. So how did you cope with these big powers, if you can say it like that? For example, in Flanders, where we are pleading for always is to make cooperation with more Nordic countries, because we share a lot of interests. So is it also something that you did during your presidency? So search for allies in certain files. So that's a question. And a second question is, do you have some best practices for us? And then I'm speaking as member of parliament to follow up the presidency, because normally it's not so easy, especially since when you're in opposition, to see what is going on in the presidency. So if you have some best practices, how you in your parliament were coping with the following up of the presidency, that would be very interesting for us. Then a question more on the content. Sweden, we can say, has made a U-turn when it comes to migration, because we have seen that Sweden was always like more of a champion at European level when it concerns a relocation of migrants, but we have seen a rather U-turn in that policy with a new government. So I just wanted to ask how this was perceived in Sweden, but also at European level. So that's also a question. Then on Ukraine, my colleague will ask a lot of questions. He just visited Ukraine. He's really a specialist concerning Ukraine. But I have two more questions. One on the membership of NATO. We know that Sweden wants to become a member of NATO, but there are some problems with Turkey, especially. So do you have some following up on that? What's the current situation in that file? And then finally, you have, you know that there is a lot of need on critical materials, raw critical materials in the European Union. We see that we are very much dependent on China, for example, but also other countries when it concerns these critical materials. But in Sweden, in the beginning of this year, there was you found a place where a lot of these critical materials are hidden is not the right word, because you found them, but you see what I mean. But then we see immediately that there is this question: what will we do? Will we go for the mining of these critical materials, or you have these the environmental impact, where we know that the European Commission currently is more seeking to give preference to the mining of these materials, since we have this dependency on China. So I just wanted to know how you will cope with this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. de Mesmaeker.
Yes, thank you. I'm a senator, same party as Anneleen, and as she spoke in English, I will try to do that as well. I will focus on Ukraine and defense in general, because indeed last night I arrived back from another visit to Ukraine, still a bit emotioned and very hard to structure my thoughts, but we had a visit to Kherson, to Mykolaiv and Odessa. But it was heavy, I can say that. And I have maybe some thoughts. I won't be too long, because I can talk for a very long time about it, but maybe some thoughts and some questions for you. The attacks are increasing again along from the left side of the Dnieper River to the right, the occupied side, where we visited Kherson, but also the surrounding villages bordering the Dnieper River, who were deoccupied. Some of them are further from the front line. Some, of course, are under heavy daily fire, and it is increasing. And not only with artillery, because in the first days after liberation, it was sporadic. They were shelled by artillery. But what we saw was really continuous attacks, aerial attacks. Now you see the planes take height, circle, and then you wait for the explosion, and you see the explosion, you hear the explosion, and it's all civilian infrastructure, because there are no strategic targets there. It's terror. The same in Kherson. I left Kherson in the middle of an air raid. We arrived in Odessa in the middle of an air alarm in the harbor, and you can not know what people there experience daily when you live through one of those attacks yourself. When you hear the explosion of the Onyx missiles, the supersonic, because the others, they were able to shoot, their air defense is working quite well there, so they were able to take out the Shahid drones and the calibers, most of them, but the supersonics were hitting target, and that it was. But at the same time, the resilience of the people. People are very disciplined. After the attack, they all come out of their shelter, their bomb shelter, and they continue their life very calmly. And maybe that is a danger for us because life continues, and the day after, life is as usual. And we think, oh, it's okay, but it's not. We cannot give in to some kind of, oh, it's okay, they will manage, they will cope. Because Putin is targeting, again, critical infrastructure. In Odessa, it was the harbor infrastructure, other cities, energy infrastructure, and so on. And the second winter, they have go through this kind of situation will be worse. And I wonder what we can do also as parliament to make sure they get what they need. Because we always hear, we will support Ukraine as long as it takes. But what does that mean? What does that mean? How long it takes? Takes what? Are we afraid to defeat Putin? Because I think that's what we need to do. Make sure that they can defeat this regime, this terrorist regime. And I think Sweden has always been a front runner in supporting Ukraine. You have done so much more than we have done. But I think it's a common effort we should do to keep supporting, but also increase support. And more than that, it's assuring their victory, and then the efforts on humanitarian assistance and reconstruction. For the moment, when we visit these romadas, these villages around, the right bank of the Dnieper, who are trying to reconstruct. They are under constant shelling. Some of them are safer. They are trying to restart their businesses, to rebuild their houses, but there's a lack of building material. For instance, roof cover, simple roof cover, firewood, clothes, warm clothes for the winter, because most of the people have lost everything. Water supply in those villages that were flooded, big problem. The ecological consequences. It's apocalyptic if you see it. It's really apocalyptic. And I know the EU is supporting on the longer term, and they have a lot of programs, but I'm wondering the short term, the immediate needs now for people to survive this second winter, not to incentive them to go away and maybe to have a new wave of refugees. To give you an example, the fire brigades in Kherson, 300 vehicles were stolen by the Russians. They are moved to Russia. They have a lack of equipment. Ukraine can't fill all of those needs. It's impossible. Farming infrastructure, the mechanics, the farming machines, 900 in the region were stolen, just taken away. Demining, I saw the demining efforts. 19,000 hectares have to be demined. Too little people and they need more sophisticated material as well. So I would like to hear your reflection on how can we, together, increase our efforts, not as long as it takes, but as long as we can assure victory, and also the immediate needs for people to start reconstructing, because they cannot wait till the end of the war. They cannot. It's impossible. They have to survive now. And then on the broader level, you have chosen for NATO. We are very glad about that after, the history and the tradition of neutrality. But you are always one of the front runners on as regard to your own defense industry. Because you were neutral, you had to rely on yourselves, and you did very well. So I wonder if you could give us some thoughts on what lessons we can draw as Belgium being the next president of the Council, to incentivize and stimulate our own European defense industries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vous avez la parole. U heeft het woord.
Dank u wel, meneer de
Meneer.
voorzitter, collega's. Ik ga mij wel in het Nederlands tot jullie wenden en dat is geen ideologische of principiële kwestie, maar ik ben veel minder taalkundig dan mijn voorgaande sprekers, de collega's van de N-VA. Eerst en vooral wil ik naar de dame van de Sociaaldemocraten, die zei van dank u wel dat jullie hier zo talrijk aanwezig zijn. Ja, ik wil het even nuanceren, want ik vind het eigenlijk beschamend dat we hier met zo weinig parlementsleden aanwezig zijn. Op de voorzitter na is hier niemand aanwezig van de meerderheid. En er zijn nogthans genoeg meerderheidspartijen in deze Vivaldi-regering, want anders zouden ze niet aan die meerderheid gekomen zijn. Dus ik wil me daar in naam van de Vlaams Belang-fractie voor excuseren. Over Oekraïne een zeer interessante tussenkomst van meneer de Mesmaker natuurlijk. Dat zal inderdaad, we moeten niet naïef zijn, dat zal een verhaal zijn, een conflict zijn, een schandelijk conflict zijn dat morgen niet opgelost is en tijdens het Belgische voorzitterschap ook niet zal opgelost zijn. We zullen natuurlijk de krachten op alle manieren moeten bundelen om daar tegenaan te gaan. Natuurlijk, er komen een aantal uitdagingen bij en het was recent nog in het nieuws. En ik zou toch ook graag jullie mening daarvan hebben. Hoe wij de Oekraïners massaal steunen zonder de eigen Europese stabiliteit te ondermijnen. En wat bedoel ik daarmee? Een concreet voorbeeld is natuurlijk de situatie in Polen. Door de graanimport en het faciliteren van de graanexport uit Oekraïne, onder andere via het spoor, waar Europa, de Europese Unie, heel wat in geïnvesteerd heeft, is natuurlijk Polen een beetje gedestabiliseerd geworden en is dat daar politiek dermate geëscaleerd, zal ik zeggen, dat de Poolse minister van Landbouw ontslag heeft genomen. Polen is ook een landbouwnatie, dus electoraal weegt dat ook zwaar door. Graag jullie visie daarover. Ten tweede, iets ruimer, geopolitiek is Oekraïne het hete hangijzer in Europa of aan de rand of de grens van Europa. Maar we hebben natuurlijk meer recent ook nog het conflict in Nagorno-Karabach, waar de Azeris een schandelijke inname van Armeens grondgebied op korte termijn voltrokken. En dat is eigenlijk vrij geruisloos gepasseerd in de Europese publieke opinie en de Europese politiek. Ik vind dat beschamend, jammer, opmerkelijk, maar ik zou daar ook toch graag jullie visie over hebben. In mindere mate, maar het blijft ook een hete hangijzer. De situatie in Kosovo, die sinds de onafhankelijkheid van Kosovo altijd min of meer labiel gebleven is, waar we daar uiteraard ook met invloeden zitten uit een land, niet toevallig van Sultan Erdogan, Turkije. Tot slot, collega van Bossuit haalde het al aan, de keuze voor het al dan niet ontginnen, of in welke mate het ontginnen van belangrijke grondstoffen om onze Europese industrie, maar ook onze groene transitie, dat die toch al vaak ter sprake gekomen is, om die te ondersteunen. Welke keuze zal Zweden daarin maken, ingeleid of ingegeven door welke pro's en contra's? Want we moeten niet naïef zijn. We hebben niet alleen de militaire invasies, zoals ik zei daarnet, Nagorno-Karabach, Oekraïne en zo verder. We hebben natuurlijk ook de economische invasie van China. We mogen daar niet blind voor zijn. En ik merk toch de laatste jaren dat daar wel iets meer gevoeligheden over de partijgrenzen heen aan de dag gelegd worden over die economische invasie van China. Hoe ervaren jullie dat in Zweden? Want we hebben enerzijds de nieuwe zijderoute, die een symbolisch dossier is in Hans-Europa vanuit China. Maar we hebben natuurlijk ook China die zich inkoopt in infrastructuur, strategische infrastructuur, bijvoorbeeld in Montenegro, maar ook meer en meer in Europese havens. De haven van Piraeus is daar het beste voorbeeld van. Hoe zit dat in jullie infrastructuur, jullie havens in infrastructuur? Hoe gaat dat daar te werk? Of hoe wapenen jullie zich daar tegen die economische invasie vanuit China? En nu echt tot slot, ik was nog één ding vergeten. Het asiel- en migratieluik is hier eigenlijk nog maar weinig aan bod gekomen, ook bij de inleiding. Het is natuurlijk voor onze partij, het Vlaams Belang, is dat een van onze kernthema's. Ik moet ook niemand zeggen dat het zeer actueel is. Ik vermoed dat er deze week zelfs een delegatie van Europees parlementsleden naar Sicilië en Lampedusa vertrekt om de situatie ter plaatse te gaan bekijken. Maar goed, in principe moeten we niet tot daar gaan om te weten wat er op ons afkomt, op ons afgekomen is en op ons zal blijven afkomen als we daar vanuit Europese hoek niets aan doen. Ook graag jullie visies daarover. Dank u wel.
Ik dank u, meneer de Spiegeleer. Meneer Peters heeft het woord.
Ja, dank u, meneer de voorzitter. Ik ben Leo Pieters, ook lid van de Senaat, maar ook als dusdanig lid van het regionaal parlement. Ik wou het even hebben over de strategische autonomie. Zweden heeft iets minder inwoners als België, maar is dermate groter als België. België is maar een klein land, maar met veel industrie, veel economie voor de grootte van het land. Nu, hoe kijken jullie naar Europa in de zin van hoe kunnen we de landen nog een bepaalde autonomie bieden? Of moet het volledig? Zijn jullie eerder meer geneigd om het meer en meer over te laten aan de Europese staat, als we het dan zo mogen noemen? Zo noemen ze zichzelf graag. Maar wij zijn er eerder voor, hebben eerder de neiging om het te houden bij de economische samenwerking. Nu, een tweede zaak is de georganiseerde misdaad, is ook al aangekaart. We hebben er aardig mee te maken. We zitten met grote havens, Antwerpen, Zeebrugge, Gent, waar dat we daar toch wel de nodige problemen mee hebben. Zweden is misschien iets minder in die zin vertegenwoordigd in die georganiseerde misdaad. Niet als staat, maar ik bedoel betrokken bij de georganiseerde misdaad. Hoe kijken jullie daarnaar, hoe dat Europees zou moeten geregeld worden dan? Want ja, elke staat, even terugkomen op het strategische autonomie, elke staat heeft zo zijn eigen manier om met zaken om te gaan. Hoe kijken jullie daar tegenaan? Dank u.
Ik dank u, meneer. En I'll give you the floor, dear colleagues.
Well, thank you, dear colleagues. You know, a buffet in Swedish is called smörgåsbord, and this was a real smörgåsbord of many issues, lots of dishes. So I think that I recommend some of my colleagues to prepare some wise answers on crime, China, Kosovo, Nagorno-Karabakh, how it's to work in opposition, mining, raw material. And I take some of the other questions first. And also, we are members from all the 8 parties in the Swedish parliament. So we have the whole axis from left to right. And many of the topics you have raised is, as in Belgium, we differ between the parties. We differ between also the governmental parties and the opposition. So therefore, we have not in all those issues the Swedish way. We have different ways because we are from different parties. Saying that, I start with things that we really are behind everyone from all the parties. Ukraine. Thank you for your report, Mark. Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. And I think that is really an important goal for all parliaments in Europe to remain that we have this war. And we have had that for 18 months, the full-scale invasion. It started already 2014 with the illegal annexation of Crimea and the attack on the eastern part of Ukraine. And it's a war from Russia in all levels. It's hybrid, it's traditional warfare, it's economic warfare. And therefore, we need to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. But it also means that we need to do it substantially. And I'm extremely proud that we from the Swedish parliament have voted on 13 packages of weapon and help to Ukraine. And we do it unanimously. All parties, all members of the parliament are behind it. And I think that all in all, we have on the arms side, on weapons, we have donated for more than 2 billion euros. And we are also supporting to use the European Peace Facility. But it's extremely important to understand that we need to stay behind Ukraine, and we need to do it for a very long time. And we also need to face that Russia is a nationalistic, imperialistic, and well-armed country, and going to be that for a foreseeable time. And therefore, a natural step for us have been the application to NATO membership. 6 out of 8 parties in the Swedish parliament are behind that. It's 2 smaller parties, around 10% of the parliament that are against it. But a broad majority in the Swedish parliament are behind the application. And we hope that the 2 remaining countries, Hungary and Turkey, is going to ratify the Swedish application and do it as soon as possible, because we had delivered. And we also think that we are security provider to the rest of Europe and NATO. And it's, as you also say, it's very much linked to the arms production. I think that this is really one of the crucial things for Europe. I think that all countries need to step up, but it's also quite complicated. And for example, I think that we only have 4 manufacturers of black powder in Europe. So we really need to see where we have the bottlenecks. But it's also important to understand that many of those companies are private, and they can't only rely on promises from politics and from the governments. They also need contracts. But I think that arms production, ammunition production, is going to be crucial for Europe for decades. But Sweden in NATO is also part of this support for Ukraine and against Russia. Yeah, and also only one more thing. I think that you're totally right when how you describe what's happening in Ukraine. We can describe it as the Aleppo strategy to terrify the people of Ukraine. But I'm also very convinced, as you are, Mark, that Ukraine as a country is stronger than ever, even if they are now fighting this ugly, bloody war. With that, colleagues, who want to start and pick up some of the topics? Yep, Matilda. Yep.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be short because, as our chairman said, we are representatives of 8 parties. So, of course, we have different views on different topics. I just want to say, when it comes to the EU presidency, I think, well, we all wanted Sweden to succeed in the presidency. So, of course, that was something that also was sort of shown throughout the presidency. But having said that, of course, we being the biggest party in the parliament and the biggest opposition party, of course, we didn't agree on everything that the government did, also during the presidency. But that's sort of democracy. And I'm very happy that we actually pushed the government to stick to our plans that we had done beforehand when it comes to presidency, to stick to working with the rule of law. So I'm very happy that you mentioned that this is also a priority for Belgium. And we were criticizing the government for not pushing the agenda on organized crime and fighting drugs on sort of the same level as we wanted to do. So of course there are differences, but as the chairman said, when it comes to Ukraine, it's a full support from the parliament. And we also got questions on how to work in opposition and how to work during the presidency. Well, in Sweden, we had a little bit tough arguments, but we sort of agreed that our sort of regular how we handle EU affairs in the parliament, between the government and the parliament, it was the same way of handling things even throughout the EU presidency. And in Sweden, sort of their government, they are obliged to come to the parliament on beforehand to be given a mandate to how to vote in the council. And that we worked on sort of on that note throughout the presidency as well, even though sort of from the opposition party, we agreed and said we can't be as nitty-gritty as we usually are, and the government got a little bit more sort of space to run the policies. So, but I think I'll stop there and get, so also other parties can have a word.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your engagement here and the questions. And I would like to comment some questions raised about organized crime and how to cooperate. I can add that I worked many years as a prosecutor in Sweden before entering the parliament a couple of years ago. And I would like to stress that we need more cooperation, not less cooperation within the EU to really fight the organized crimes. We need more tools, and we need faster ways to communicate between countries, because organized crimes knows no borders. Organized crime today is often digitalized, and we have a lot of advanced fraud. We have money laundering, and if you only concentrate on the drugs and the violence, you miss a big part of the organized crimes, because organized crime today is working like companies, and they make huge profits. And we need to have better tools to reach the big, the huge profits that these companies, as you may call them, make. And therefore, I also would like to, when Belgium become president soon, organized crime should also stress these factors with economic aspects of organized crimes. But I really would like to see more cooperation in this field. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There's a question on migration policy.
Thank you very much. We had a question on migration policy, and I'm a spokesperson for our party. So I thought I'd pick up that thread. The current Swedish government is implementing something we call a paradigm shift. We're basically moving from being the most generous in terms of rights and benefits for migrants to sort of a more strict policy. We call it a minimalist implementation of the European framework. As we all know, asylum policy is very much dictated by legal acts from the European Union. So what we're doing very basically is finding a minimalist way to implement the European asylum framework. And it's kind of an abrupt change, going from being the very most generous to being quite strict in a short amount of time. That's not optimal, obviously, but we feel that it's necessary. Sweden is experiencing a shocking level of criminality right now, unfortunately. Gun crime is happening all over the country at a level that we have never seen before. This was a major issue during the election, and I feel like we have quite strong support from the public in the notion that the level of criminality that we have right now is very much a consequence of the migration rules that we had and that we've had for a long time, which has been basically letting anyone who wants to move to Sweden move to Sweden. It doesn't work, unfortunately. We're also doing a lot to make it more difficult to stay illegally, which is very easy under the current framework. People who have no permits to stay can enjoy a lot of the social services, dental care, healthcare, social benefits, cash benefits. We call this the society of shadows, or the shadow society, which is kind of a dramatic term, but basically there is a whole part of the country that lives in a legal sort of gray area, which is not good, obviously. So we're doing a lot to deal with that. And yeah, that's basically the whole story.
Oh, sorry. So, yeah, not all parties and not all members of the parliament, not all members of the Committee on European Affairs agreeing on that. But that was how the governmental side is tried to explain the current situation. So some things like NATO we are agreeing on, some other things we differ a lot on. Magnus Berntram from the Christian Democratic Party, the other EPP party in the Swedish parliament.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for all the questions. We would need more time to elaborate a little bit more. I think we are looking at the same issues as really important. So thank you for the question. I will try to do a short answer on few of the things that asked for that has not been commented yet. But one thing that I think we noticed from the parliament side was that we got so many visits from everywhere in the world, and I think that is something that you should prepare for and make sure that you will divide upon your members to be a good host in this way. I think that was something that was a little bit something that we a lesson learned. Another lesson is, of course, during the time when you are your government is the president of the council, you have the role of being the honest broker, and you can't just push for your own issue during that time. So you need to be more, use your ears more than your mouth in a sense. It's very hard for politicians, absolutely. And I think that's something that's good to talk about that a little bit before, because I think we try to do that so we had the same view from all the parties. And then there is politics, so it's not always easy to go there all the time. Another thing is, of course, for us, the unity among in EU among the members for the strong support for Ukraine, that must be number one of all the issues. And remember, I was in Ukraine in May, and they said what they were mostly scared of was that there will be 17 election in the next year in Europe, and every election could be potential problem for them. So we'll make sure that we know this and try to help them. One word about critical raw material in China. Of course, you're right, and this is something that the government is looking into. Is it possible for opening the mining and in this area? It's not so. It's not just a decision to take. There's a lot of approved steps that need to be taken, and finally, both Nagorno-Karabakh and Kosovo. Of course, this is something that we look into very careful. In general, there is a very positive sense in the Swedish Parliament towards the enlargement of the EU. We need to stick to all the rules, but when we push for Ukraine, we can't. We must not forget Western Balkan. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me add two small things on Anna-Lene's initially questions. I think that to be the presidency is also an opportunity to search for like-minded countries. And for example, when we had the Troika, we had the Czech Republic in the Troika, and that was really an eye-opener for me, that the Czech Republic and Sweden was so like-minded in so many aspects. So I think that this kind of mid-sized countries, as Belgium and Sweden are, we really need to reach out hands to other similar like-minded countries. We may be not agreeing on all aspects. For example, I think probably we differ on the budget, but inside the European Union, we have lots of common interest in different issues. So I think that this is an appel. The mid-sized countries need to find each other and to also form our alliances. so that it's not that EU is not only engined by the German Franco machine. So that is really one of the conclusions that we have drawn. And secondly, and that my final comment, let us assure you that Sweden stands totally behind you in Belgium, that we are going to do what we can do to help you and support you in the Troika. And if it's anything, please contact us. We have this bilateral between the parties, but we have also the bilateral between the parliaments. But we absolutely stay behind you and wish you good luck. And also, during your presidency, we have the European Parliament elections, and you have the election in your country. So good luck to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Hans, dear colleagues. Merci pour ces mots, merci pour votre soutien et je ne doute pas évidemment que dans les mois à venir, nous aurons évidemment à travailler ensemble. Cette présidence belge est effectivement un grand défi parce que, comme vous l'avez souligné, nous aurons en même temps toute une série d'élections également à préparer, mais nous ferons effectivement en sorte que cette législature européenne puisse se terminer le mieux possible. Et pour cela, bien sûr, nous devons compter sur nos propres forces, mais également sur le soutien et aussi sur l'expérience de ceux qui nous ont précédés dans cette lourde tâche. Merci à tous, merci aux collègues du Parlement, de la Chambre et du Sénat d'avoir été présents. Merci de cette visite et encore une fois, vous êtes toujours chez vous au sein de la capitale de l'Europe, qu'est Bruxelles. Thank you so much.